A poor girl walks toward a dirty grotto outside a small French town. The year is 1858. The place is Lourdes. She is 14 years old, but she looks younger. She is small, she is sickly, she has asthma. Her family is poor enough to live in a former jail cell called the cachot, a damp little room no one would choose unless life had left no better choice. Her name is Bernadette Soubirous. She is not educated. She is not powerful. She does not speak polished French like the officials who will soon question her. She is gathering firewood with her sister and a friend when she comes to a place called Mesa Biel. It is not beautiful in the way pilgrims imagine it now. It is rough, cold, ordinary. A place outside town, near the river, associated with animals, brushwood, and things people would rather keep out of sight. Then Bernadette hears a sound like wind. She looks toward the grotto, and in a niche in the rock, she sees a young woman in white, a white dress, a blue sash, a rosary, a golden rose on each foot. Bernadette does not know what to do, so she does the only thing her Catholic heart knows. She reaches for her rosary. Here's what most people miss. The mystery of Saint Bernadette is not only that she saw a lady. The deeper mystery is that heaven chose a girl the world had almost no reason to believe. This is not a story about religious fantasy. This is not a story about blind superstition. This is not a story about turning a sick child into a legend. This is a story about poverty, truth, interrogation, water, silence, suffering, and the strange way God often places great messages in the hands of the small. To understand Bernadette, you have to understand how unlikely she was. She was born Marie Bernadette Soubirous on January 7th, 1844. Her father, François, had once worked as a miller, but the family's fortunes collapsed. Her mother, Louise, worked hard and suffered with the family's poverty. Bernadette grew up in hardship, illness, hunger, and social shame. She was not the girl a human committee would choose for an apparition. She was poor. She was behind in religious instruction. She had not yet made her first communion. She struggled with school. She spoke the local dialect more naturally than formal French. If someone wanted to invent a perfect witness, Bernadette was a bad choice. And that is precisely why she is so difficult to ignore. But it gets stranger, because Bernadette did not begin with a grand message. At first the lady does not even give her name. Bernadette calls her the lady, or in her own language, a small young lady. The first apparition happens on February 11th, 1858. Then Bernadette returns, again and again. Soon people notice. Her sister talks, her mother becomes alarmed. The town begins to stir. Some people believe, some laugh, some worry, some accuse. This is how real religious events often begin. Not with perfect order, with confusion, with rumor, with fear, with poor people talking in doorways. With officials asking questions, with priests refusing to rush. With the ordinary world suddenly disturbed by the possibility that God has entered it. Pay attention to this. Bernadette was not immediately celebrated by everyone. She was questioned. She was doubted. She was pressured. Civil authorities wanted the gatherings to stop. Local officials were suspicious. Even the parish priest, Father Dominique Peramale, did not simply accept everything she said. He demanded clarity. He wanted the lady's name. He wanted proof that this was not imagination, illness, or deception. That caution matters. A serious Catholic account should not pretend everyone instantly believed. The Church is not supposed to accept every claim of visions without testing. Private revelation must be discerned. The child may be sincere and still mistaken. Crowds may be moved and still confused. A holy event, if real, can survive questions. Bernadette survived questions. She did not become more dramatic. She did not decorate the story to make it easier. She repeated what she had seen and heard again and again, the same simple account. That became one of her strongest signs. Not spectacle, consistency. Now watch what happens next. During the apparitions, the lady gives messages: prayer, penance, conversion, a chapel, procession. The themes are not exotic, they are deeply Catholic. Pray for sinners. Do penance. Come in procession. Build a chapel. And then comes the spring. The lady tells Bernadette to drink from the spring and wash herself there. But there is no visible spring. Bernadette digs in the ground. At first, mud appears. She smears it on herself. The crowd is embarrassed. Some think she looks foolish. Some think the whole thing is collapsing into absurdity. Then water begins to come. A spring emerges at the grotto. That spring will become one of the most famous features of Lourdes. Pilgrims will drink the water, wash with it, carry it home. Reports of healing will become part of Lourdes' story. Some will be investigated carefully. A small number will eventually be recognized by church authorities as miraculous after strict review. But the water itself is not magic. That must be said. Catholic faith does not treat Lourdes water as a charm. The water is a sign, a reminder, a place where prayer, suffering, hope, and trust meet. The Gospel of John speaks of living water. At the well, Jesus tells the Samaritan woman that whoever drinks the water he gives will never thirst in the deepest sense. Lourdes points there, not to water as power, to Christ as life. There's one more thing. The great secret of Lourdes comes through a name. Father Peyramel wants to know who the lady is, Bernadette asks. The lady finally answers in the local dialect. I am the Immaculate Conception. Bernadette does not understand the theology. That matters. 4 years earlier, in 1854, Pope Pius IX had proclaimed the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, that Mary, from the first moment of her conception, was preserved from original sin by the grace of God in view of the merits of Jesus Christ. That is a precise doctrine. Bernadette was not a theologian. She reportedly repeated the phrase as she ran to the priest so she would not forget it. I am the Immaculate Conception. To Father Peyramel, this was striking. How would this poor, uneducated girl come up with such a phrase? For believers, the answer was clear. For skeptics, questions remained, but from that moment, the mystery deepened. The lady was not merely asking for attention, she was identifying herself in language tied directly to a newly proclaimed Marian dogma. And this is where it gets remarkable. Mary's title does not point away from Christ. It points to Him. The Immaculate Conception is not about Mary saving herself. It is about God's grace acting in her first fully and freely because of Christ. The Greek word charis means grace. Mary is full of grace because God has acted. In Luke's Gospel, Mary calls herself the handmaid of the Lord. She magnifies God. She does not magnify herself. At Cana she says, "Do whatever he tells you." That is the Marian pattern. Mary comes near. Mary speaks tenderly. Mary calls for prayer and penance. Mary points to Jesus. If Lourdes is truly Marian, it must be Christ-centered. And it is. The sick come to Lourdes not because Mary replaces Christ, but because they believe a mother leads them to her son. Hold that thought. Because after the apparitions, Bernadette does something unexpected. She does not become the Queen of Lourdes. She does not build a personal empire around her vision. She does not spend her life performing holiness for crowds. She leaves. In 1866, Bernadette enters the Sisters of Charity of Nevers and receives the religious name Sister Marie Bernard. There, in Nevers, she lives hidden. She works, she prays, she suffers illness. She is not always treated gently. Some sisters are skeptical of her. Some people come expecting a living relic, a girl touched by heaven. But Bernadette does not want attention fixed on herself. She once compared herself to a broom. When the broom has been used, it is put back behind the door. That is one of the most revealing images of her life. She understood herself as an instrument, not the message, not the source, not the miracle. An instrument. God used her, then hiddenness received her. Here's the part nobody tells you. Bernadette's greatest miracle may not be what she saw. It may be that she did not let what she saw make her proud. Think about that. A poor girl becomes the center of one of the most famous Marian events in modern history. Crowds gather. Priests question her. Officials fear her. Pilgrims remember her. The place where she saw the lady becomes one of the great pilgrimage shrines of the Catholic world. And Bernadette goes to a convent and accepts ordinary suffering. No throne, no celebrity, no control over the devotion. No need to make herself larger. That is holiness. The Latin word testimonium means witness. A witness does not replace the truth. A witness points to it. Bernadette's life says, I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. Now look to God. She died on April 16th, 1879, at only 35 years old. Her body would later become another part of the story. During the process connected with her beatification, her body was exhumed and found unusually preserved. Today she lies in a glass reliquary in Nevers. But even here, careful speech matters. The visible face and hands are covered with wax. Say that plainly, it does not destroy. Devotion, it protects truth. Bernadette does not need exaggeration. Her witness is strong enough. She was beatified by Pope Pius XI in 1925 and canonized in 1933. But canonization did not mean every popular story around Lourdes must be accepted without thought. It meant the church recognized her holiness. That is the center, not fame, holiness, not spectacle, fidelity, not the grotto alone. The girl who remained truthful after the grotto. Now, watch what happens next. Lourdes becomes a place of the sick. This is one of the most beautiful parts of the mystery. The apparitions happened to a sick girl from a poor family. The spring appeared in a place that had been considered unpleasant and unimportant. And over time, the suffering of the world began to flow. There, wheelchairs, stretchers, nurses, volunteers, priests, hearing confessions, families carrying hope and grief together. People who are healed, people who are not healed, people who return home still sick. But changed, that last group matters. If you only talk about miraculous cures, you misunderstand Lourdes. The deeper mystery is not only that some people are healed, it is that many people who remain sick still encounter grace. They are washed, they pray, they confess, they receive the Eucharist, they are treated with dignity. They are not hidden from view. At Lourdes, suffering is not pushed to the edge of the church. It is brought to the center. That is profoundly Christian. Jesus did not avoid the sick. He touched lepers. He heard the blind. He raised the dead. He entered human pain. Lourdes continues that gospel pattern. Not every illness is removed, but no suffering person is meaningless. That is the quiet power of Bernadette's story. The poor girl who suffered becomes a doorway through which millions of suffering people come near to prayer. The small one becomes a guide for the wounded. The hidden one becomes a companion for the sick. And the grotto becomes a place where the weak are not treated as burdens. Sante, Paul says God chooses what is weak in the world to shame the strong. Bernadette is that verse in flesh. The world would not choose her. God did. So, what should you take away from the mystery of Saint Bernadette? First, Bernadette's story is serious because it was tested. She was questioned by family, priests, police, doctors, and church authorities. Her claim was not accepted instantly. The apparitions were approved as worthy of belief only after investigation. Second, Bernadette's holiness is not reducible to visions. She became a saint through humility, obedience, suffering, truthfulness, prayer, and hidden fidelity. The apparitions made her known, but hidden holiness made her a saint. Third, the deepest message of Lourdes is not spectacle. It is grace for the lowly. A poor girl, a rough grotto, a spring in the mud, a lady who says prayer and penance matter, a shrine where the sick are not. Forgotten, a saint who disappears, so Christ can remain the center. When you think of Saint Bernadette, what strikes you most? The grotto, the spring, the words, I am the Immaculate Conception, her hidden life in Nevers, or the suffering pilgrims who still come to Lourdes. Tell me below, and remember this, Bernadette did not become great by making herself visible. She became great by telling the truth, and then becoming small. That is the mystery. Heaven spoke through a poor girl, because the world needed to learn again that God sees the lowly, and sometimes the smallest witness carries the message the world most needs to hear.